Snoop Dogg is having the worst week of his career. And I'm not talking about album sales. I'm not talking about reviews. I'm talking about his own family calling him out. Ray J just went public, his own cousin, saying Snoop has turned into the new Suge Knight. The very person Snoop spent decades criticizing. The very label boss who allegedly exploited him. And now, Snoop is being accused of doing the exact same thing. To the people who helped build his legacy. From Daz Dillinger to Nate Dogg's family. From Long Beach to Compton. Everyone is saying the same thing. Snoop is running death row like a tyrant. And before we go any further, be sure to leave a like and subscribe because the Snoop fans are going to try to bury this video. They're going to say we're hating. They're going to say we're clout chasing. But the receipts are too strong. And somebody has to talk about this. Because this isn't just about Snoop anymore. This is about a pattern in hip-hop, where the oppressed become the oppressors. Let me take you back. February 2022. Snoop Dogg announces he's acquired Death Row Records, the label that made him a superstar, the label that released Doggy Style, one of the greatest debut albums in hip-hop history. The announcement sent shockwaves through the culture, because Death Row wasn't just a label. It was a symbol of West Coast dominance in the 90s, but also a symbol of exploitation, of artists getting jerked out of their royalties, of Suge Knight's iron fist. For those who don't know, Suge Knight ran Death Row like a criminal enterprise. Artists were intimidated. Publishing was stolen. Contracts were signed under duress. Tupac's family had to fight for years to get his masters back. Dr. Dre left the label and never looked back. He called it the worst period of his professional life. And Snoop was one of the biggest victims. He spent years in legal battles trying to get out of his Death Row contract. He publicly criticized Suge, called him a bully, said the business practices were corrupt, said he would never treat artists the way he was treated. So when Snoop acquired Death Row in 2022, people celebrated. They thought this was redemption. They thought Snoop was going to right the wrongs. Give back publishing to Daz Dillinger. Take care of Nate Dogg's family. Make sure everyone who built the Death Row legacy got their fair share. But that's not what happened. Not even close. Instead, what we're seeing is a pattern that's been building for years. And now it's exploding in public. Daz Dillinger was the first to speak out. For those who don't know, Daz was instrumental in creating the Death Row sound. He produced tracks on Doggy Style. He was part of the Dog Pound. He helped craft some of the most iconic West Coast records ever made. And when Snoop took over Death Row, Daz expected to finally get what was owed to him. The publishing rights. The trademark to the Dog Pound logo. The recognition for his contributions. But according to Daz, Snoop tried to trademark everything behind his back. Tried to lock him out of his own intellectual property. And when Daz confronted him, Snoop's response wasn't professional. It wasn't a business conversation. Snoop threatened him, said he was going to destroy him business-wise, called him broke, told him to leave him alone. That's not the response of someone who's trying to do right by their people. That's the response of someone protecting their money, at all costs. And Daz wasn't the only one. Nate Dogg's son came forward with allegations. He said Snoop went to his grandmother's house, got permission to take Nate Dogg's masters, and then never gave the family any transparency about where those masters are, whether they're safe, whether they're being exploited. The family has been asking questions for years. And according to Nate Dogg's son, Snoop just denies everything. Says he doesn't have them. Says he doesn't know anything about it. But the family doesn't believe him. And honestly, why should they? If you don't have the masters, then where are they? If you're not exploiting them, then show the receipts. But Snoop stays silent. And that silence is loud. Now here's where things get really interesting. Ray J just entered the conversation. And Ray J isn't some random artist. Ray J is Snoop's cousin, blood family, someone who's been in the industry for decades, someone who knows how the game works. And Ray J just put out a public video, calling Snoop out, saying he's talked to multiple people, Dash, Julian, Corrupt, and others. And they're all saying the same thing. Snoop has become the new Suge Knight. And now here's where things really get deep. Because Ray J didn't just make a casual comment. He made a direct appeal, on camera, with emotion in his voice. He said, "Snoop, you're my cousin. I love you. But everyone is telling me you turned into the new Suge. Let that sink in for a second. Your own family member, going public, saying you've become the person you used to criticize. That's not just business drama. That's a moral indictment." And what makes Ray J's statement so powerful is the specificity. He didn't just say people are upset. He named names. Dash, Julian, Corrupt. These are people in Snoop's circle. People who've worked with him. People who helped build the Death Row brand. And according to Ray J, all of them feel betrayed. All of them feel like Snoop promised to be the savior, and instead became the villain. Now let's break down what Ray J is really saying here, because there are layers to this. First, Ray J says people expected Snoop to give back publishing, to give back rights, to make things right after decades of exploitation. That was the whole point of Snoop acquiring Death Row. It was supposed to be symbolic, a former victim taking control and healing the wounds. But according to Ray J, Snoop hasn't given anybody anything. He's kept all the money. He's kept all the control. And he's gotten richer while everyone else struggles. Second, Ray J brings up something really important. He says, everybody from the LBC to Carson to Compton to Los Angeles all the way up to Santa Clarita. That's geographic specificity. He's saying this isn't just a few disgruntled artists. This is the entire West Coast community. People across multiple cities. Multiple crews, all saying Snoop is doing bad business. That's a consensus. And when you have that kind of consensus, you can't just dismiss it as hate. Third, Ray J says something that cuts deep. He says, you were supposed to be the one. You were supposed to be the savior. That language is messianic, and it shows how much faith people had in Snoop. They really believed he would be different. They really believed he would break the cycle. But he didn't. And now the disappointment is profound. Now let's talk about Snoop's response, or rather, his lack of response. Because that's the most telling part of this whole situation. When Daz Dillinger called him out, Snoop didn't show receipts. He didn't post contracts. He didn't show bank statements proving he paid people fairly. Instead, he threatened Daz, said he was going to destroy him, called him broke. That's classic deflection. That's what someone does when they don't have a legitimate defense. And when Nate Dogg's family asked about the masters, Snoop just denied having them. No transparency, no documentation, just denial. And now with Ray J, Snoop has been silent. As of right now, Snoop hasn't responded publicly to Ray J's video. He hasn't addressed the allegations. He hasn't defended himself. And in the court of public opinion, silence is guilt. Because if these allegations were false, wouldn't you immediately defend yourself? Wouldn't you post proof? Wouldn't you set the record straight? But Snoop isn't doing that. And that tells you everything you need to know. Now let's get into the psychology of this, because this is where things get really interesting. Ray J said something in his video that's incredibly profound. He referenced a quote, "Everybody hates being oppressed. Nobody hates oppression." Let me repeat that. Everybody hates being oppressed. Nobody hates oppression. That means we all hate being the victim. But we don't actually hate the system. We just want to be on top of it. And that's exactly what happened with Snoop. When Snoop was an artist under Suge Knight, he hated the exploitation. He hated the unfair contracts. He hated not owning his masters. He hated being controlled. But he didn't hate the concept of exploitation. He just hated being on the receiving end. And now that he's the label boss, he's doing the exact same thing. Because when you're the one holding the power, it's easy to justify. You tell yourself, well, I paid millions for this label. I need to recoup. You tell yourself, business is business. I can't just give everything away. You tell yourself, they're being ungrateful. They should be happy with what they have. Those are the same things every exploitative label executive has said. And Snoop is saying them now. That's the cycle. The oppressed become the oppressors. And it happens in hip-hop over and over again. Let's look at the business side of this for a moment. Because some people might be thinking, well, Snoop paid for the label. He has a right to make money. And sure, that's true. But here's the thing. When you buy a label with a legacy like Death Row, you're buying more than just assets. You're buying a cultural institution. You're buying the trust of a community. And with that comes responsibility. Snoop didn't just market this as a business acquisition. He marketed it as a homecoming, as justice, as redemption. He positioned himself as the hero who was going to restore Death Row to its former glory and make things right for the artists who were wronged. That's how he sold it to the public. That's how he got the support of the culture. But if you're going to market yourself as a savior, you better act like one. You can't promise to heal wounds and then turn around and inflict new ones. You can't criticize Suge Knight for decades and then adopt his business practices, because that makes you a hypocrite. And hip-hop has never forgiven hypocrites. Now let's talk about the Nate Dogg situation specifically, because this one is particularly troubling. Nate Dogg was Snoop's best friend. They grew up together in Long Beach. They were like brothers. Nate Dogg's voice is on some of Snoop's biggest hits. Regulate. Ain't No Fun. The next episode. Nate Dogg was integral to Snoop's success. And when Nate Dogg passed away in 2011, it was devastating. Snoop mourned publicly. He talked about how much Nate meant to him, how much he missed him, how he would always honor his legacy. But now, Nate Dogg's family is saying Snoop took his masters and won't give them any transparency, won't tell them where the masters are, won't show them how the music is being monetized, won't give them a piece of the pie. If that's true, that's betrayal on a deeply personal level. That's not just bad business. That's dishonoring your friend's memory. That's exploiting a dead man, a man who can't defend himself, a man whose family is just trying to get what's rightfully theirs. And the fact that Snoop's response has been to deny and deflect is shameful. If you really loved Nate Dogg, you would take care of his family. Period. No excuses. No legal loopholes. You would do right by them. But according to Nate Dogg's son, that hasn't happened. And that's why the family is speaking out. Let's connect this to a larger pattern in hip-hop. Because Snoop isn't the first artist to become what he once criticized. Jay-Z spent years talking about ownership and empowerment. But when he sold Tidal, a lot of independent artists felt left out. Diddy built his empire on the backs of artists like The Lox and Maze. And both of them have publicly said Diddy exploited them. Dr. Dre is a billionaire. But artists like Michelle Liu and JJ Fad have said he didn't fairly compensate them. The pattern is clear. Once artists become executives, they start thinking like executives. They start prioritizing profit over people. They start using the same justifications that were used against them. And the culture suffers. Because we need our heroes. We need people who break the cycle, not people who perpetuate it. And when someone like Snoop, who positioned himself as different, turns out to be the same, that's when people lose faith. Now let's talk about what Ray J is really asking for. Because his video wasn't just an attack. It was a plea. He said, "Snoop, I love you. Please respond. Please tell me this isn't true." That's someone who wants to believe the best. Someone who's hoping there's an explanation. Someone who's giving Snoop a chance to defend himself. And Ray J even laid out what Snoop should do. He said, "Tell me you gave everybody their publishing. Tell me you gave them their rights. Tell me you made things right." That's a roadmap. That's Ray J saying, "Here's how you fix this. Just be transparent." But as of now, Snoop hasn't taken that opportunity. And the longer he stays silent, the more guilty he looks. Because if you're innocent, you speak up. You defend yourself. You show the proof. But if you're guilty, you hide. You deflect. You hope it blows over. And that's what it seems like Snoop is doing. Let's also address the people who might be defending Snoop right now. Some people are going to say, well, maybe these artists are just being greedy. Or maybe they're just jealous of Snoop's success. Or maybe they signed bad contracts and now they're mad. But here's the problem with that argument. These aren't random people. Daz Dillinger isn't some nobody. He's a death row legend. Nate Dogg's family isn't clout chasing. They're grieving and trying to protect their loved one's legacy. Ray J isn't a hater. He's Snoop's cousin. When this many people from this many different circles are saying the same thing, you have to pay attention. You have to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's truth to it. And if Snoop was really doing right by people, wouldn't there be voices defending him? Wouldn't there be artists saying, "No, Snoop paid me fairly. Snoop gave me my publishing"? But we're not hearing that. We're only hearing complaints. And that silence from the other side is deafening. Now let's talk about what this means for Snoop's legacy. Because this is bigger than just a business dispute. This is about how Snoop will be remembered. Right now, Snoop is a cultural icon. He's transcended hip-hop. He's done Super Bowl halftime shows. He's been in movies and TV shows. He's got partnerships with major brands. He's beloved by multiple generations. But if this narrative solidifies, if the consensus becomes that Snoop exploited his own people, if the comparison to Suge Knight sticks, that will tarnish everything. Because hip-hop fans don't forget. We're still talking about how Diddy did the Lox dirty in the 90s. We're still talking about how Suge Knight terrorized death row. We're still talking about how certain executives exploited certain artists. And if Snoop gets added to that list, it will define his later years. People will say, yeah, Snoop was great as an artist. But as a businessman, he was just like the rest of them. And that's a tragedy, because Snoop had the chance to be different. He had the chance to break the cycle. But according to the people closest to him, he didn't. Let's also consider the cultural impact of this moment, because this is happening in 2026. We're in an era where artists are more vocal than ever about ownership, about fair compensation, about transparency. The conversation around masters and publishing has never been louder. Taylor Swift re-recorded her entire catalog to own her work. Kanye West went on rants about owning his masters. Independent artists are building careers without labels. The culture is demanding better. And then here comes Snoop Dogg, allegedly doing the exact opposite. Allegedly hoarding rights. Allegedly refusing to share the wealth. Allegedly silencing people who speak out. That's antithetical to where hip-hop is supposed to be going. That's regressive. And it sends a message to young artists. Don't trust your heroes. They'll become just like the system that hurt them. That's a dangerous message. Because we need examples of people doing it right. We need proof that you can be successful and ethical. But if Snoop isn't providing that example, then who will? Now let's examine Snoop's options moving forward. Because he's at a crossroads. Option 1. Stay silent and hope this blows over. That's the worst option. Because silence will be interpreted as guilt. The narrative will solidify, and his reputation will suffer permanent damage. Option 2. Come out with a defensive, aggressive response. Attack the people accusing him. Call them liars or haters. That's also bad. Because it will make him look like Suge Knight even more. It will confirm that he's using intimidation tactics. And it will alienate even more people. Option 3. Be transparent. Release the contracts. Show the payments. Prove that he's compensated people fairly. Or, if he hasn't, admit it and make it right. That's the only option that saves his legacy. That's the only option that shows he's willing to be accountable. But it requires humility. And it requires sacrifice. And the question is Snoop willing to do that? Let me also address the broader question here. Why does this keep happening in hip-hop? Why do artists become executives and then exploit other artists? Part of it is capitalism. The music industry is designed to extract value. And when you're the one in power, it's tempting to extract as much as possible. Part of it is ego. A lot of successful artists develop a God complex. They start believing they're entitled to everything. And part of it is trauma. When you've been exploited for years, you develop a scarcity mindset. You hoard wealth because you're afraid of losing it. You exploit others because you feel like it's your turn. But none of those are excuses. Because being a victim doesn't give you the right to victimize others. And Snoop, of all people, should understand that. He lived through the Suge Knight era. He knows what exploitation feels like. So the fact that he's allegedly doing the same thing is inexcusable. It shows a failure of empathy, a failure of integrity, and a failure of leadership. So where do we go from here? What are the implications of this moment? First, this puts pressure on Snoop to respond. Ray J's video has millions of views. The hip-hop community is paying attention. And the longer Snoop stays silent, the worse it gets. He can't ignore this forever. At some point, he's going to have to address it. And when he does, it's going to define the next chapter of his career. Second, this opens the door for more people to speak out. If Ray J felt comfortable going public, others might too. There could be more allegations coming. More artists sharing their stories. More family members demanding transparency. And if that happens, this becomes a full-blown crisis for Snoop. Third, this changes how we view Death Row's revival. A lot of people celebrated when Snoop bought the label. They thought it was a victory for the culture. But now it's looking like it might have been a mistake. Like maybe Death Row should have stayed dead. Because if the new era is just as exploitative as the old era, what's the point? Fourth, this affects Snoop's business relationships. Brands that partner with Snoop are going to be watching this closely. If the narrative becomes that Snoop is exploiting his own people, that's a PR nightmare. Companies don't want to be associated with that. So this could have financial consequences beyond just Death Row. Fifth, this is a test for hip-hop journalism. Are we going to hold Snoop accountable? Or are we going to give him a pass because he's a legend? The culture needs to be consistent. If we criticize other executives for exploitation, we have to criticize Snoop too. No one should be above accountability. And finally, this is a lesson for the next generation. Young artists are watching this. They're seeing what happens when you become the thing you once hated. And hopefully, they'll learn from it. Hopefully, when they get into positions of power, they'll remember this moment. And they'll choose to do better. They'll choose to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. Because that's the only way hip-hop evolves. That's the only way we build a better industry. And so now, With all that said, let me know what you think. Do you believe Ray J? Do you think Snoop has really become the new Suge Knight? Or do you think people are being too hard on him? Do you think Snoop owes Daz Dillinger his publishing? Should he give Nate Dogg's family transparency about the masters? Or do you think, as a businessman, Snoop has the right to protect his investment? Let me know in the comments. Because this is a complex issue, and I want to hear different perspectives. What does this mean for Snoop's legacy? Can he recover from this? Or is the damage already done? And what do you think Snoop should do next? Should he stay silent? Should he address this publicly? Or should he handle it privately with the people involved? If you made it to this point in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out tremendously, and it helps push this conversation into the algorithm so more people can see it. Because this is an important conversation. This isn't just gossip. This is about accountability. This is about making sure our heroes actually live up to the values they claim to represent. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means everything, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. But in the meantime, if you want to see how another hip-hop legend is handling controversy, check out the video on screen right now. Because the stories just keep coming, and we're going to keep covering them. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.